Dr. Nyoro, please share with us the latest situation in Kenya. Exactly how serious is the situation at this moment?
Thank you very much for having me. Sorry. As you have just indicated, the drought situation and food insecurity has been increasing since last year. Towards the end of the year, we had about 1 million, 1.2 million people who are affected. But over the last 1.5 months or so, that number has kind of doubled. The number of animals, both livestock and wildlife animals that have been affected have also been increasing, and food shortages have been increasing too. So to the extent that the president has now declared the drought a national disaster is a clear indication that it has gotten now from the last two stages, which was the alarm to alert to emergency, and that indicates the extent to which this is a devastating situation here in Kenya.
Now, Kenya has long suffered from drought. We know that in 2009 there was also a national drought disaster, and 4 million Kenyans were close to starvation back then as rain failed for the third consecutive year. Now, could you explain why drought has always been an issue in Kenya? Has it been a problem of climate, or has it been a relatively man-made disaster as well?
Yes, you are right. Way back in 2009, Kenya and also other African countries within the Horn of Africa suffered one of the biggest drought then that affected over 12 million people within the region. Further in 2011, there was another devastating drought in Kenya and some of the countries around. And the figures that were floated in terms of the post-disaster effects were up to the tune of $12.5 billion. So it's true that Kenya has been facing, not just Kenya, the countries within the Eastern Africa have been facing these droughts at a higher frequency than we used to see before. But also the intensity, the number of people affected are increasing. So if you look at what has been happening over the last 10 years, the drought cycle has reduced from 10 to 8 to 5 and now almost to 4 years. The number of people affected have been increasing. This is a combination of many factors, the key one obviously being the impact of climate change. There is this oscillation between La Nina and La Nina, and to a large extent that had quite a devastating effect. I think it's also important to consider that Kenya, 20% of the land mass is arable, 80% is arid and semi-arid, which means that even in a normal year, they may not get sufficient rains. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of precarious, making a bad situation worse.
Yeah. So very briefly, what kind of international help is coming to Kenya, and what kind of extra help are you watching out for? Are you looking for?
Okay. This was only declared a national disaster on Friday last week. We are hoping that the international community will start to respond, and specifically the response should be coming in form of food. In form of money. The Kenya government started a program a couple of months ago which is sending the money, limiting the money direct to some of those people who are affected. You know, we do have a mobile phone money transfer system that is very effective, and you know, at a certain point we thought that that's the best way of dealing with this, because the recipient will be able to buy their food of choice, and that then builds in a secondary market for food to be moved from areas where it is in surplus to the deficit region. So the kind of expectations is that, when the food can come in kind, that would be great. If not in kind, resources that will be made available to procure food.
Thank you, Dr. James Nyoro. Thank you, Dr. James Nyoro. I have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us from Nairobi. And to better analyze the underlying reasons and the situation for the Kenyan drought, we are joined in the studio by Madam Wu Changhua, Greater China Director from the Climate Group. She's experienced in the environment and development policy analysis. Now, we know that Kenya is not unknown to drought, and actually the United Nations predicted that late 2016 and early 2017 there would be a drought in that country. But why was the country still not prepared for it?
I think there are a lot of issues, as Dr. Asher just mentioned, on the ground already. Kenya continues to be a poor country, a developing country, a country still still developing. And as reflected in reality, what does the developing country mean actually in responding to emergencies like the drought and other climate change extreme weathers actually is the resilience, the climate resilience. As reflected in the cases natural disaster, actually national disaster in Kenya is that, you live in a time and, the climate crisis, the country is experiencing more and more frequent, more severe impact from the climate change, but the country doesn't have enough capability or capacity to respond, right? As reflected, so people, 2.4 million people already affected. Sure. Many, livestock, wildlife being affected, but the country itself couldn't really do much. So that's why they are calling for international help as well.
Yeah, at the same time, as we just heard from the doctor, now they have already reached out for help, but it's going to take quite some time for help to reach these people. But at the same time, the early warning system for such mechanism is already mature. What in your mind can be done to speed up the emergency aid delivery?
I think the doctor mentioned that you started to see mobile technologies actually being deployed on the ground. If every individual is equipped with the mobile phones, with the information technology today available, which is relatively cost effective, very cheap as well, so that they will be able to get the information, have their choices, and so they will be able actually to have access to food, to other choices there, so that they will be able to have stronger resilience to climate, a crisis like this.
Now, the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta said he would not tolerate anybody who would try to take advantage of the situation to defraud public funds. Actually, the reason why he mentioned that is Kenya ranks very low, according to Transparency International, on a corruption perception, basically 145th among 176 nations. Will corruption, in your mind, hinder the international community from helping Kenyans?
The answer is absolutely yes. It has been a major factor actually hindering the process. This is about deeper the governance issue. Just look at the climate change, climate finance landscape there. So on one side, we have the international protocol or agreement. Actually, industrialized countries are committing to providing financial support aid to developing countries. But the biggest barrier over the years is the governance issue, because the corruption so prevalent actually in many parts of the world. So for taxpayers in developed world, they are worried to say, why do I need to give money actually to other developing countries, which is not guaranteed at all, whether the money will be directed towards
addressing the issue. So it's really a dilemma. On the one hand, they desperately need such help, but on the other hand, people are not trusting how they are going to earmark the money for the purpose. What can be done about it?
This is a long,
topic,
long march.
Sure,
actually,
big
governance, actually enhancing the governance issue has been a long, which has been there, will continue to be there for a long time. That is why you started to see, like under the UN, under the Sustainable Development, at the national level, regional level, governance reform, enhancing government has become a major issue agenda, pretty much for everyone. If that's not properly addressed, that's going to continue to hinder situations like this.
Thank you very much, Wu Changhua, the Greater China Director from the Climate Group.